This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, you know, one of the things we talk about on this show, one of the things that this show offers, and by that I mean what this audience, what you offer, is a sense of community. And quite frankly, my friends, we're going to be leaning on that today as we process a result that proved to be an alternative of what we were looking for in Florida, as the Panthers, led by Conn Smythe winner Sam Bennett, who I am guilty of gushing over in the most recent episode, talking about his journey as a Calgary Flames draft pick all the way to one of the most valuable players in Florida Panthers history, have hoisted their second Stanley Cup. It's not what we wanted to be talking about today, and it's not what we will spend all day talking about, but we shall gather together and talk it out before we get into some of the bigger issues, or perhaps some of the more international issues that are dominating the headlines, including the G7 and this conflict between Israel and Iran. The United States has entered that chat. We'll get into it with Sharan Kaur momentarily. This episode of Real Talk is presented by our friends at We Know Training. You can find them online at wkt.ca. In a world where credentials and compliance really matter, regardless of the industry that we're talking about, but most especially in regulated industries, We Know Training is building something bigger than just training courses. They're creating the infrastructure of trust. And that means when somebody says that they're certified, whether they're looking after your gran in the care home or whether they're operating heavy machinery on the job site, when they say they're certified, you can believe it. And it's all backed by digital credentials that can't be faked. And that's something that every industry needs right now. If we're talking directly to you, if this is what you're in charge for in your organization, in your industry, make sure you take a second to check out what this team is doing across the country and around the world at We Know Training. Again, you'll find them online at wkt.ca. The Edmonton Oilers flying down to Florida with one goal in mind and one goal only, and that was to win, to beat the Florida Panthers on home ice and force a Game 7. It would have been the second Game 7 in a row between these two teams. Worthy combatants. The Florida Panthers, as you know, in their third Stanley Cup Final, and of course the Edmonton Oilers hoping to bring this series back to Rogers Place in Alberta's capital, where ideally, led by superstars Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard, and the rest, they'd have a shot at the city's first Stanley Cup in 35 years. But indeed, and in fact, that's not what happened. As the great Finnish two-way player, Selke Trophy winner Alexander Barkov, accepted Lord Stanley's chalice from League Commissioner Gary Bettman. Of course, head coach Paul Maurice winning his second cup in a row in Florida, the third team in the last 10 years to win back-to-back Stanley Cups. The Florida Panthers, of course, joining the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Pittsburgh Penguins as they celebrate on home ice the franchise's second Stanley Cup. We've been talking about it. We've been having fun in it. We have been emotionally immersed in it over the past number of weeks through obviously a dramatic and exciting cup run, series wins against the Los Angeles Kings, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and the Dallas Stars. But the Edmonton Oilers running into one of the most formidable teams in NHL's recent memory. And, of course, disappointing, may I say, breaking the hearts of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of both diehard, longtime, and new Oilers fans across the country. We were here throughout it all. Johnny Infamous was turning the tables at the Moss Pit. Of course, you did, Johnny. And by the way, as we're talking, I'm going to load up your Instagram stories. Because
you honor me.
Well, your Instagram, your post, talk to us as I'm about to show this on what was going through your mind as you were posting these incredible images of your experience over the past. This is over the past number of weeks that you were showing us.
It's just amazing. The Oilers community, the Oilers fans last night. I only posted one picture. I had the same feeling as you after that first goal. We just kind of, we had the bracelets this year we're showing, the bracelets that were given out to all the fans everyone was wearing. And just, you kind of knew after the first goal last night. But, man, just an incredible – the Moss Pit is a place that like none other. When you see all the party spots, the outdoor fan experiences across the league. I mean, the Oilers has got to be up there. Top 3 for sure. For me, number 1.
Easily top 3.
It fell in Pride Month. We had a lot of that intertwined. That was just awesome to see the community endorsing that as well.
The Pink Pony Club.
Oh, the Pink Pony Club. It was a great season. It was an amazing season. And I'll just say that anyone who thinks that, like, the Oilers played poorly, probably doesn't know hockey that much. What happened here is just the Panthers were so good.
So good.
The Panthers were so good. And we saw this in the last game where no penalties, Ryan. I mean, one penalty where it went 4-on-4. That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, both teams wanted to stay out of the box. And when you take away penalties and that kind of intensity, the game looks a little slower.
Especially with the Oilers with one of the best power plays
100%.
by the numbers in NHL history, but were unable, to kind of secure that opportunity.
Yeah.
Florida played an incredibly diligent and disciplined game.
100%.
In Game 6.
And when you take away penalties, the game looks a little less intense. But when you do that, the raw skill shines through. And that's like, the Panthers are a wagon. Credit to them. Like, you may not like how they play. You may not like the muggles in the stands. And I'm from Florida, but man, it can be a cesspool down there. People are enraged, especially at sporting events. But it's simple. Panthers were the better team, and they were lucky to have no injuries. I mean, we had Hyman, we had Ekholm back, but obviously not playing 100%. These aren't excuses, by the way. These are just things that add up to make a Stanley Cup team win or lose. Obviously, Nuge, something was going on there. I'm sure we'll know after. He was just slower. It looked like a couple other players battling things. And you look at the Panthers, and it seemed like in the final round, the finals, they were healthier than ever. They really hit their stride in the final. When you put Connor and Leon on the boards and can't get anything up the middle, it's kind of impossible. But nothing to be ashamed of here. McDavid and Draisaitl tied for most points in the whole playoffs. Leon, record for OT win goals in the playoffs for them. Skinner ties Bobrovsky for most shutouts with 3. Pickard, that 6 in a row win streak. And then most comeback wins by any team in the playoffs. Like, these are not stats to be ashamed of.
No.
It just simply means that the Panthers were the better team. And this last thing I'll say before I throw it back to you is just at any given time, there's about 1,000 guys in the world who can play in the NHL. You got about 750 active. You got another 250 to 350 who are on IR or going up and down in the AHL or whatever. So let's call it 1,000 people on this planet who can play at this level of hockey. It tends to make the other team look bad when a series ends like this, but I'll say it again. It's just that the Panthers are so good.
So good. And Connor McDavid said that we're not going to play all the post-game interviews, mostly because we don't have the broadcast rights for them, but also because it's just tough to listen to. I experienced last night's game with our close family, actually watching here at the studio. So we had our little guy, Noah, who's 3. He's too young to kind of understand exactly what's going on. But our son, Wyatt, who's 9, is as diehard as it gets. Yeah. He's very passionate. He did take the loss hard, but at the same time, I was really proud of him. Yeah. That kind of a stiff upper lip, like just, recognizing that I said, we'll be back there next year, kiddo. We can get back there next year. That's the pep talk that Zach Hyman gave this team a year ago in the dressing room after Game 7. He said, boys, I know we'll be back. And I bet that there's some of that among the team, but you also think of kind of the psychology of how this all works. Now this will be a long offseason after a long playoff run, right? Yeah. As long as it gets, and then you've got this long offseason where I would imagine if I'm an Edmonton Oiler, I'm probably signing out of my Instagram for the next few months because all you're going to be seeing is Stanley Cup parties, Stanley Cup parade. You're going to be seeing all the players have their day with Lord Stanley, and I know that would be a tough one for this team. But Connor McDavid last night, in talking to reporters, was at a loss for words. Once you've said what he said, which was this Florida Panthers team, and it's like talking about your ex-spouse's new partner. You don't really want to go on and on and on about how great they are. But Connor talking last night, he says from top to bottom, this Panthers team is a really great team. He said they managed to slant the ice. He said we were skating uphill the whole time. In Connor's words, he said we tried the same fucking thing time and time again.
Yeah, he let that
and it didn't
F-bomb
work.
slip.
He let it fly, which I never mind in those moments of emotion. You can't imagine the heartbreak of players, and I would say top to bottom, but I would say most especially the players that have a huge amount of pressure on them, players like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, just acknowledging that this Florida team that they ran into was a team that ultimately deserves to win the Stanley Cup. I was able to share this with Wyatt as some sort of, it's not consolation, but it's commiseration. I said, kiddo, I'm a 77 born kid. I said, when I was 9 years old, just like you, let me tell you about the 1986 Stanley Cup Final when I was 9.
Sit down, let me tell you something. Put a log on the fire.
Back in the day, phones were cabled to the wall, and there's no such thing as the internet. But as you all know, I grew up a Calgary Flames fan, and 1986 was the first year, courtesy of Steve Smith, I guess, that the Calgary Flames were able to get past the Oilers in that Smythe division and get to the Stanley Cup Final, and they ran into that hot rookie goalie named Patrick Waugh. And I talked to Wyatt about what it was like as a 9-year-old to get super excited about the Stanley Cup and the playoffs. And I remember watching the games with my parents, and I remember the feeling at 9 years old when those dastardly Montreal Canadiens beat our Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup Final. I said, kiddo, we had to wait 3 years, but it did happen again. For Oilers fans, and the Steve Smith reference resonating with you, you only had to wait 1 more year, and you were back. But that year feels like an eternity, and I guarantee for the players today, the Oilers, as they're flying back to the capital city, and of course back to, if their families weren't there with them, back to their families and their circles of support. They're not thinking about next year right now. I don't think they're thinking about obviously the result in Game 6, but I hope, like you said, with your positivity, that the Oilers are also to recognize and to acknowledge that this was a special year. They weren't necessarily, I mean, obviously based on the composition of their lineup, they're always going to be mentioned among some of the top teams in the NHL, and they belong to be mentioned on that list. But they were not, by heads and shoulders above everybody else, considered to be the Stanley Cup favorite. They were among those who could win the Stanley Cup, and that was a list of probably 7 or 8 teams. So it's never easy to get to the Stanley Cup Final.
Well, it's the hardest trophy to win.
Oilers fans will I know, keep the faith that they'll be able to get back to their 3rd Stanley Cup Final in 3 years. But right now, it just feels too soon to think about it.
I don't know. The door was like open halfway last season. This season, it was like wide open. It's still wide open. I think the Oilers' chance to win a cup or cups is the next 2 to 3 years, and I think they're going to do it with Connor and Leon, and they just got to tweak things. They made some adjustments to their lineup. I'm sure Stan Bowman isn't taking a minute off. He's probably in the office today looking at changes he can make or whatever. But it really is, it's such a speck of dust that can tip the scale in the Stanley Cup Finals. But in this one especially, you had, first of all, Sam Bennett, whether you like him or not, this guy owned the playoffs.
Beast.
This guy, absolutely incredible. He's going to get a huge payday, whether it's from Florida or somewhere else.
Unrestricted free agent. What timing, by the way, for him and Brad Marchand.
Sure. But if you look at regular season stats, Sam Bennett wasn't one of the best players, but that's what it's about. When you can turn on that extra gear in the finals, and you never know who's going to have it. Was it going to be him? Was it going to be Brad Marchand? Was it going to be Connor McDavid? Was it going to be Evan Boucher? Whoever. Like it all comes down to those 2 months. Can you stay healthy? Can you eat right? Can you exercise? Can you get enough sleep? Can you stay mentally sure? And the Oilers, it just happens. Like maybe it was health. Maybe it was mental. Maybe it was stuff going on in their lives. But everything has to be perfect. It's the hardest trophy to win in the Big Four. So I cannot take anything away from the Florida Panthers. But I'll also say that, like, they are so close, the Edmonton Oilers. This window is wide open.
Close.
Next 2 to 3 years, Connor's going to get this cup. He's probably going to sign like this week. Don't take this post-game presser of him being down as, he hates Edmonton. Boom, he's going to sign this week. Leon's already locked in, and we've got to tweak some things. But, yeah, like, the pickup of Brad Marchand and just Bobrovsky, like, how can you argue against that? Skinner gets 3-4 shutouts or whatever. Picker goes 6 in a row. Still not enough to beat this guy. He's absolutely incredible. He's the best goalie in the league. And they had all the ingredients. They had all the ingredients. And even when you have all the ingredients, look at the people who win the President's Trophy every year. When Washington won for those years in a row and they never got a cup, Winnipeg this year. Like, it does not matter during the regular season. It matters those 2 months. Can you play as hard as you've ever played in your fucking life and stay mentally fit for it? And the Panthers just did it better. But I tell you one thing, there's nothing that gets you ready more to win a cup than losing a few times in a row and knowing what little things you did wrong. And twice in a row for the Oilers is too many. I think next year or the year after, it's going to happen.
Let's say next year. We'll
hey,
say next year.
The sun came up today, Ryan.
It did.
Even though my alarm came on and I had, hello, darkness, my old friend. And then I skipped forward on my Spotify and it was like, unbreak my heart. And I was like, oh, I had this sadness playoff
I will say the one thing around the sun rising is that it rose in Florida before it rose here. And it's been a little bit annoying, but a tiny little smile on my face, I guess, as you can recognize there's some Canadian players on that Panthers team. There are some players that deserve to win the Stanley Cup. But
any one of those guys on the Oilers?
All the Panthers are already at the Elbow Room, the notorious bar, the big Florida Panthers bar down there, and the Instagram evidence shows that there's already a big new dent in the Stanley Cup. So they've been up all night. Yeah. I thought this was interesting. The Instagram account Puck Empire has released the voting totals for the Conn Smythe Trophy for the playoff MVP. The votes go on a 5-3-1 basis, so those that vote get a first, second, and third place. They vote within 10 minutes remaining in Game 6, and Sam Bennett, as you know, with a total of 76 points, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy. And second, all the goals he scored in the final had to factor in. Brad Marchand, second in voting for the Conn Smythe Trophy. Sergei Bobrovsky, third with a distant 10 points. So this was between the two forwards. Leon Draisaitl with 7 points, decent consideration there, and Gustav Forsling with one vote. But good for Forsling. I mean, played a hell of a game.
Series too.
You know, it was a great series. Obviously, very disappointing. I'd also like to say from our perch here on the corner in Edmonton, a local reference of 104th and 104th, right across the street from the rink last night. I'd like to commend Oilers fans for behaving themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, everybody's heartbroken heading home, but there was nobody flipping cars.
No.
There was nobody starting fires, smashing windows. No. And I think that holds true to what we were saying about Oilers fans this entire run, is that they kept it classy. I was honored, as a matter of fact, to have a chance to appear on CBC National last night with Ian Hannamansing. Brought me in to talk about our time, working, you and I, the Oilers official DJ, me as the in-game host, in that 7-year journey, and the journey from pre-McDavid to post-McDavid to the new rink, what a cup championship would mean to the city. And I was talking to Ian. I said, you can hear it. I mean, the energy here is palpable. But like you said, when Sam Reinhart scored that first goal, his first of 4 in the game.
What a game for him.
And what a game for Reinhart. What a first goal to open it up. You just felt a tiny little bit of a oof.
Yeah.
Like, when your favorite boxer takes one like right in the face and hits the mat in the first round.
Yeah, I saw Ian up there. I gave him a little shout out at one of the drops. I faded down the music. I was like, shout out Ian Hannamansing. I saw him turn around.
He's such a good friend of this show.
Amazing. And I just felt bad because they were all set up there on the perch waiting for a win and bringing it back to Edmonton for Game 7. But again, like when you have that many players and when you have 2 players who are like a few votes, like 2 of them could have won the Conn Smythe. You got Brad Marchand, you got Sam Bennett, you got Reinhart, who was kind of not there during the playoffs, but then comes up with 4 goals in the final. That's
great when they needed them.
How can you beat a team like that? This is hockey, and how can you not be romantic about hockey when, like you said, it's like boxing?
Yeah,
you get knocked down, you take a few months off, you go to Mexico, you do whatever you have to do. But knowing Connor McDavid, like this is. And Leon, they're the hardest working guys. They're going to take a week or 2 off, and you're going to see them on the ice. You're going to see them practicing. You're going to see them in the offices, in the rooms, talking with coaches, players, what can we do? How can we tweak? How can we do this? Right?
Tweaks to the roster. There will be changes to the team, as you need to do year to year for a number of different realities. Tony's watching us right now in the live chat powered by Park Power. Says, say what you want. This was Sam Bennett's Stanley Cup. He was a beast through the playoffs. Jay says, what's the process? The Oilers didn't show up for the last 2 games. And how about this one from Tracy, who just says, sorry, Johnny, was that an orange Oilers vest? I've got it up here on Instagram so we can show this off again. This is the sickest piece of Oilers apparel I've ever seen. A custom custom threads for Infamous.
I gotta find the guy, but he basically makes these.
Randy Cusack.
Randy
right?
Cusack, that's my guy. Thank you for shouting him out. He's an incredible artist. He's a guy who makes these vests for guys who ride motorcycles and stuff. But he made mine orange. Pretty cool. Got some spikes on it. I've got the Captain C on it. It's got E-Town represent.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. But yeah,
I get this from Dubious, who says Florida, basically they play boring, shutdown, defensive hockey. He says might as well be the trap. I mean, you're not wrong, but there's nothing boring about hoisting the cup. But I'll take your point. I mean, they were absolutely stifling that dynamic Oilers offense that just couldn't seem to find a way to get it done. Connor said last night, he says we were hoping to win a 2-1 game, and obviously that didn't happen. But as a stat shared by the team at Sportsnet last night, the Oilers allowed 2 or more goals in every first period this series.
Oh, I mean,
and that's also something that's going to be really tough to win.
The Panthers were leading in this series 255 minutes. The Oilers, I think it was 33. So you got to have a lead. You got to impose some dominance, and they didn't. And it's not that the Oilers didn't show up. Like I said, 2 months of intense playoff hockey like this, if you're not mentally and physically 100%, and the other team is, Florida found another gear in this last. When a guy like Sam Reinhart, who was, non-existent, scores 4 goals, that means the other guys who are running out of gas, Reinhart jumps up and says, no worries, I'll take this.
That's the beauty of depth.
And when your goalie is just it's so dialed in, I mean, that's what happened. And it's not that the Oilers were bad. They just stayed at the same level and didn't get that gear up that you need to hoist that cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin says it just baffles me. If they knew what they were doing wasn't working, why didn't they do anything different? He says they might as well have handed them the cup. Cam in a pizzeria says Panthers GM Bill Zito has built a monster. He says, I'm curious what Bob Nicholson thought his flaws were when he interviewed for the Oilers back in 2019. Justin goes on to say, if you're Connor McDavid after that, do you really re-sign with Edmonton and keep pushing or look elsewhere? I will say this. When Leon extended with the Oilers for 8 years, there's no way he did it without talking to Connor.
No, they're best
And Connor's
friends.
wife has just opened a brand new business in the capital city.
They're not going anywhere.
A series of businesses. I would wager that they're staying. But then again, I also wagered a lot on last night's game and basically lost everything that I won earlier in the year. So,
but that last comment about, they built a monster, that's also a gamble, Ryan. Did anyone think picking up Brad Marchand, he was going to have this amazing playoff run? That's a coin toss. Did anyone think Sam Bennett, who when he was in Calgary was hardly even a factor, would become the guy of the playoffs? Do you know that your goalie is going to stay healthy and be so dialed in the way Bob Ruff is? All that stuff is it's like having a blindfold on. So yes, they build a good team, but in the end, everything has to come together, and it just did for
100%. Elias says, I can't wait for the Jets to be the first Canadian team to win the Cup since '93. He says Bob is not better than Hellebuck. He's just got a better team in front of him for now. I mean, Jets fans win the President's Trophy, and they're dispatched, as you know, of course, before reaching the Stanley Cup Final. So I bet Jets fans are feeling like they've got something owing to them next year. And Gordon also pointing out the Oilers are number 2 in the league. He says that's an achievement.
Well,
it's like talking to Olympic silver medalists. It's like they all wanted the gold. But Olympics, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that second place is cool. And I also know that that's not, Gordon's not saying we're going to throw a parade for second place.
No.
However, they are Western Conference champions. It's a consolation prize. But at the same time, this team should be very proud of the run, and the fans should be proud of the team.
I mean, this is one of the most intense sports to play. You look at the Big Four. Other than football, which, the games are way less, but that's because you're getting hit all the time. Hockey is super intense. You play hurt, all these things. But, being the second, someone's got to be second, right? And last year it was 1 goal, 1 game that they lost by. This year, some other things happened and they came up short. But there's nothing, Oilers fans, I'm telling you this today, there is nothing to be ashamed of. This is one of the most incredibly talented teams in the league. Yeah. And the core of it, whether Skinner comes back or Pickard stays or we get another second or there's another goalie who comes in or some of those defense gets swapped around, the main core, which of course we could just put the tippy top of Connor and Leon, and I assume Knobloch stays because he's got them there twice in a row.
You get your team to the final 2 years in a row.
But this team is incredible, and it's just I'm telling you, it's a few specks of dust on that scale, Ryan.
I agree with you.
It's never, people wake up today. I saw someone's post, one of our friends, I won't mention her name, someone we both know, who said, that was fucking embarrassing. And I wrote out a huge reply, hit send, and immediately deleted because I was like, I'm not even going to argue. But like, that was not an embarrassment. It was simply a team on one side that ran out of gas and a team on the other that put it into fifth gear.
Yeah, I'm doing a little research on the fly here to answer a question because this is, who is it? Giants for Life's wondering who's the last team that won both the President's Trophy and then the Stanley Cup. Per the World Wide Web, it was the 2013 Chicago Blackhawks, which was the last team to do it. Plain power is not wrong, quoting Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last. Giants for Life going on to say Brad Marchand was an absolute beast for them. He sure was, and I would suggest that Brad Marchand earned an extra $5 to $10 million.
How's Boston feeling this morning?
How's Boston feeling? Aaron
what did they
says,
trade him for?
Aaron says Zach Hyman's absence was notable, and I think that's worth noting as well. Boston traded Brad Marchand for a second-round pick with the condition that turned it to it became a first-round pick when they got through 2 rounds of the playoffs, but still.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? I guess he could go back to Boston. I would suggest he's not going anywhere.
But he could go wherever he wants.
He can go wherever he wants, and he's going to
this.
get a great deal. 37 years old, he'll get a 3-4 year deal. They'll pay him $7 million.
He's the new Corey Perry. He can go to any team that's trying to get to the cup and give him that extra.
Perry? 4 finals in the last 5 years.
Is the curse real? Is it real?
I don't know.
Is the Corey Perry curse real?
And
right?
do the Oilers offer Perry $1 million to come back next year, turning 41 years of age? Corey Perry, I would say, was not the. Corey Perry scored some huge goals. Ken Kay in here is saying people are blaming Stuart Skinner. Stuart Skinner was not the problem. He says the team was the issue.
How much better do you need a goalie to play to win if they get 3 shutouts, all those wins, the backup comes in and win? Like, what are you asking for from a goalie for him to get 12 shutouts?
Yeah.
Like he did an amazing job, but also I think mentally there's something that wasn't there.
White Dream says Florida letting all the first-timers lift the cup first, says that was a top-level class act organization. I love seeing Nate Schmidt hoist the cup early, which was kind of cool. And then Sharon just, Corey fucking Perry, with a bunch of exclamation marks. I think Sharon wants him back. Listen, Sharan Kaur is joining us this morning, and I told Sharon when we booked her on the show, I said, you're either going to be dealing with Johnny and I riding a high of a Game 6 win, forcing 7, I said, or you might need to talk us off the ledge. And she said, I can do both. So Sharan Kaur coming up in 60 seconds. First, I want to let you know about somebody that we're partnering with that we're really excited about because I believe in this business.
Hey!
And by the way, I'm a customer, John, to this
I know
business.
You are.
And I was a customer first before we started doing business together. But if you're looking to level up your grilling game this summer, if you're looking to get grilling, I want to recommend You Need a Barbecue in beautiful Sherwood Park. You Need a Barbecue is the absolute best spot to pick up your summer barbecue essentials. Barbecues, seasonings, sauces, accessories. And here's the cool part. Here's how I first connected with them. They also teach classes to help you up your barbecue game. If you want to know the way to perfectly sear a steak, how do you nail a brisket? How do you keep chicken breasts from drying out on the grill? Russell Bryan and the team can hook you up. They've got a summer series of barbecue classes featuring award-winning guest pitmasters from across North America, and you can find the full list at youneedabarbecue.com/events. Our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy reminding you that if you're looking for a new opportunity, if you're underemployed or maybe unhappily employed, and you'd love to join a dynamic, fast-growing renewable energy team, check out Kubi.ca. That's Kuby.ca. Under their solar link, you can find the careers posted there. They've got a bunch of openings. They've always got openings. That's how fast they're growing in Alberta and BC, including Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Kamloops, and Kelowna. They're looking for sales experts. They're looking for installers, those of you with your ticket. They're looking for apprentices. They're looking for engineers. You name it, you'll find it under the careers link at Kubi.ca. And if you found yourself lying awake at night for reasons other than the Oilers' loss, maybe it's your family's financial security, maybe it's the future of your retirement, if you're wondering if you should take your CPP early or wait, if you're wondering what happens to your spouse if something happens to you, we recommend North Road Investment Council. Marshall, Carey, and the team can answer those questions or maybe let you know which questions you need to be asking. And of course, you're not paying them commissions on products they're selling you from the big bank. This is no fluff, no pressure. You're going to pay these independent fiduciaries a per-hour fee for their clear advice and strategies that, quite frankly, just make sense. You can learn more about North Road Investment Council today by visiting northroadic.com. Sharan Kaur is a longtime political staffer, a political strategist, a campaign manager, and a political commentator whose work is seen, watched, and read all across North America. A good friend of this show, but as far as I know, not a huge Oilers fan. But you've agreed to show up today and help us work through our emotions. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, and apologies for my timing. I apparently don't know how to manage my life, and hence my 911, Ryan, I'm behind schedule. So
it didn't
I'm
matter.
sorry the Oilers lost. I told you yesterday that I would walk you off a ledge. I just don't know in which direction we're going in. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. There's another time that they can play.
Yes.
You and Prime Minister Carney can both get together and be sad about it.
Let me ask you about this. This is a troll job, and I don't know if the risk is worth it or not. I guess, Pierre Poilievre's right-hand human, she who directed the campaign, Jenny Byrne, has simply and quietly, well, not very quietly, but she didn't leave a lot of commentary there. Our buddy Mo Amir had something to say about this, but what do you make about Jenny Byrne, conservative top shelfer, simply posting a photo after the Oilers lose of the Prime Minister with some of the Oilers stars?
Listen, I'm a big fan of trolling because I think people deserve it sometimes, and it's also just funny. Did I read too much into it? Like, no. Was that worth her time? Probably no. And I actually saw somebody post something earlier today where they came at Jenny in a pretty viscerally derogatory way. That
was Evan Scrimshaw.
I'm not going to say what he said, but man, does that kid need to get out of his basement and get a life, because you don't call women that. I don't care which party you're part of. I'm not of the same political leaning as Jenny, and I felt the need to tell him to shut up because that's not okay. We don't refer to women that way. But you know what? It's a troll post. Like, would I have done it? No, but I do a lot of troll-like things half the time. So,
here's the thing. I can respect a troll job. I actually love troll jobs. And so I actually smirked when I saw her post the photo of the Prime Minister with Zach Hyman, Connor McDavid, and Darnell Nurse. The only thing that makes me wonder if it was smart or not is that she and her star candidate, Pierre Poilievre, who, as you know, lost in Ontario in the recent election, is about to seek a seat, and he's obviously going to win it. It's one of the safest conservative ridings in the country. But they're about to run a candidate in a by-election in Alberta, and I wondered if, while the body was still warm, if that was the time to go after Oilers Nation. I'm not sure.
No, of course it's not. Like, was it necessary? No. Was it something against the Oilers? Probably not so much as it was a way for her to go against Carney. Like, it's petty, and this is like when I like to troll, and I like to make sure my trolling there's precision to it, and it's got to be funny. Some might find this to be funny. I just thought it was like, okay, next, move on.
Precision trolling. That feels that could be a band name. I like that a lot. The Kananaskis, Eyes of the World on Banff and Kananaskis, obviously a beautiful part of our country, and the goal being that some of the most powerful nations in the world are going to reach deals and agreements on some pretty important stuff, maybe avert crises on some pretty important files. Generally speaking, before we get into it, before we talk about Donald Trump's early exit, what's your assessment of how Mark Carney, vis-a-vis how Canada performed at the G7?
So listen, I think you're going to find two very different perspectives out there of people, how they think the G7 went. I've participated in many G7s. I've organized G7s, and I got to say, I understand what Prime Minister Carney was doing. He not only did he get the group of 7 together, so you've got IMF, World Bank, you've got your countries involved, but he went out of the way to also invite. He invited the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who did not come, but he did invite him. He invited Prime Minister Modi of India, which caused a lot of stir. And why he did that, and I wrote about this at length yesterday, but he did that because we currently have a U.S. Trading partner that is no longer reliable, and he had to look outside of the pool of things to do, and also try to diffuse Trump, right? We remember the last G7 that Canada held when Trudeau was in office in Charlevoix, Quebec. and he had a hissy fit over the communique after he left. It was just a bit of a mess. So I understand the strategy Prime Minister Carney took here. Now, I think that the meeting itself got overshadowed by everyone complaining about the fact that India was there. And I understand and appreciate people's concern with what's happening. But for the first time since the assassination of a Canadian, speculated to be done by Indian government officials, there is a dialogue. And it is better to have a dialogue to come to a conclusion or to find justice than there is to have animosity. I'd say diplomacy is not black and white. It is uncomfortable. It is a gray space, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable and be in that space to have these discussions. I think people were being naive. I think a lot of pundits and journalists were being overly critical of what the outcome could have been. Canada's got a massive Indian community here. We need to have good relationships with India. I come from the Indian community, and I am not I'm not out there cheerleading for Prime Minister Modi, but I also understand why we need to have that dynamic for trading purposes and just regular diplomacy. So I think the G7 overall was fine. I think it was great. It was done. It looked pretty. It looked nice. It was in Kananaskis. It was his first big meeting where he kind of pulled his muscles to bring in some of the people that respect him. We saw Mexico there. We saw a whole bunch of people. What is that going to mean for Donald Trump? He left early because of what's happening in the Middle East, to be determined. But we didn't see any tables flipped by the President of the United States. So I call that a win.
Yeah, no kidding. And I do think that that's something that we'll talk about Trump in just a second, but I wanted to reference an interview that we did back on June 9th with Chris Alexander, former immigration minister, obviously longtime Canadian diplomat, and he really called out our country, called out Canada for not doing enough on Ukraine aid. Basically said that we could have been sending military equipment over there months, if not years ago. He said we need to do more. Generally speaking, for Ukraine, who is defending or fighting for all of us? Those were the words that former Minister Alexander used, talking about Vladimir Putin's goals of expansion throughout Europe. Canada, of course, by way of the Prime Minister, making a $4.3 billion commitment to Ukraine at the G7. In your mind, is it the right move? Is it enough? Were you hoping to see more?
Well, I think we have to do everything to support Ukraine wherever possible. So it's nice to actually see that commitment. I think we all have this collective heartbreak for Zelensky after watching him get Zelensky'd in the White House, and kind of facing that tumultuous relationship where President Trump is kind of elevating Putin and why isn't Putin at the G7 type of nonsense. So I think it was symbolic and important. I do think that we do need to de-escalate what's happening in that region, but it's not necessarily going to stop anytime soon. So I think the commitment was probably warranted and needed. We have to support Ukraine. I know there's going to be people domestically who don't love the idea that we're giving them more money to do this, but we have to help our friends in need, and I think he really needs it.
You've been writing over the last few days, and we're going to link to some of your work in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube about, basically the commentary around the G7, some of the focus that people have had, and you've accused some folks of being a little too basic on a couple of specific fronts. Can you talk to us about these gripes? Can you bring this precision trolling and turn it into a hot take on Real Talk on what's burning between your ears?
I love a hot take. Yeah, you know what? It is basic. And I say that not as an insult. I just think that we are so simplistic as society. And you and I have talked about this on the shows before about not necessarily getting into it with people on social media because it gets heated. But I have, to be full disclosure, it's out there. I've kind of gone hard on people about this because people have been coming at Prime Minister Carney to say that diplomacy should be done in one way and one way only. And you don't talk to your enemies. You don't talk to people who you don't agree with. And I think that's basic. I think that we live in a complex world. I think it's also naive for us to assume that there's G7 countries that don't have blood on their hands. Canadians and Canada, we're Boy Scouts. We don't go and I say this like vaguely, but like we're not out there doing these covert missions like a lot of these other countries are. I'm sure there are, but it's not as commonly done. So when we talk about things like India, for example, when we talk things about like Saudi Arabia, yes, bad things have happened and they have done bad things. But does that mean you completely discourage any conversations? No, it doesn't. Conversations and engagement does not mean we are endorsing them. It is a strategy. And I think all these people out there, there's from some staff from Prime Minister Trudeau's office who came out hard yesterday as well, and people associated with him to say, Prime Minister Modi is a thug. Yeah, you know what? He very much is a thug in many ways, but India is a massive superpower. If we did not engage them, where does that leave us? We've had a tumultuous relationship for the last several years. We've inflamed it. It's just so basic to say, we can't talk to them. They killed someone. We're not going to talk to them. You know what? We hold them to, we need justice for it. India is finally communicating with Canada on this investigation, and that has not happened in a long time. So these are the things that need to happen. We have to be uncomfortable, and people need to stop being so binary when it comes to diplomacy. When we look at the Middle East, you look at Saudi Arabia, I think the entire global universe came out really hard against the Crown Prince and his administration after what happened in Turkey with Khashoggi. Does that mean that forever in time we don't have any engagement and involvement? No. I lived in Saudi Arabia. I have seen the development that has happened there. We have to acknowledge the change and modernization they're going through. Did they do something bad? Yes, absolutely. Has the U.S. done really bad things? 100%. Let's look at the U.S.'s footprint in all of the Middle East and what's happened there. So my hot take of the day is that people need to stop using their moral clarity of Western lenses on how other countries operate and maybe have more nuance. Have a little bit of nuance and understand that while your moral compass is saying, no, this guy's a bad guy, let's not talk to it, it can impact your entire economy, which means it can impact your entire society. So stop being so basic, guys.
Stop being so basic. Donald Trump steals the show when he arrives. He holds the show while he's there, and then he keeps the show as he departs, including some pretty interesting statements, not all of them factual, including Russia's involvement with the formerly G8. Here's what the President of the United States had to say that raised a lot of eyebrows.
Together very well. I look forward to that. The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way. But it used to be the G8, and now it's, I guess, what's that, 8 years ago, it switched over. They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake. Even though I wasn't in politics then, I was very loud about it. It was a mistake in that you spend so much time talking about Russia, and he's no longer at the table, so it makes life more complicated. But you wouldn't have had the war. Other than that, I think we're going to accomplish a lot.
That was President Donald Trump in Kananaskis at the G7, courtesy of Fox News. Of course, it was Prime Minister Stephen Harper that was at the helm when Russia was booted from the G8. But your thoughts on the take from Trump?
Am I shocked? No. It's like, I would love to know what it is that Vladimir Putin has on Donald Trump for him to be like simping so hard for him. It is like, it's next level admiration that he's got for a guy who is not a good person. So it was listen, my face has subtitles and Prime Minister Carney's clearly doesn't, because he kept his cool on that. I would have just kind of, I don't even know what I would have done. I think it's kind of comical that he thinks it's a good stage to have that conversation. And I can't see a single person at that table who would probably say, yeah, you know what? President Trump is right. Let's bring Vladimir Putin back into the G7 and make it a G8. Like, nobody. There's probably some dictators around the world who'd be happy with it, but no one of like-mindedness in the G7 would want that. So that was a bit of a weird hot take from President Donald Trump, but he's got a lot of them. So at least he's consistent.
Yeah. Can you think of it? I mean, you just talked about being less basic. And you talked about not necessarily applying an individual's moral lens to potential trading partners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. is there, in the spirit of that comment, is there any argument that you can think of that would justify welcoming Russia back to the G8 in being less basic?
I don't know, more Russian vodka. Like, I'm sure there's like, of course, having countries on that table who are like-minded is good, but is Russia even semi-like-minded? I would say no, not in its current state and form. But yeah, sure, if we had someone like Putin back at that table, would there be an opportunity to de-escalate things? I would say so. But when you're a leader of a country that is forcefully now for some time attacking a sovereign nation, it's hard to move past that basicness of like, where's the good in that, right? Like, when you're trying to annex an entire country, despite everyone's intervention, I think there is a bit of a moral compass, and maybe I have to eat my own words around not being so basic in how I think about that. I would love for more countries to come together and have conversations. I actually think that you have to talk to everyone. You have to talk to your enemies. You have to talk to people who don't like you. You have to talk to everybody, because eventually you will come to consensus in some way, shape, or form. But we've seen President Putin to be a dictator like none other. So it's kind of hard to move past some of that to actually have them at the table.
As Donald Trump leaves, I think early and can we say somewhat unexpectedly from the G7, he says that he was required to be somewhere else. The journalists in attendance asked him, "Well, does this have to do with Iran and Israel escalating tensions there?" He says it's much bigger than that, but I think the assumption was that his departure had something to do with the United States considering getting involved in that conflict. Here he is. Johnny, we can roll that clip if you want to check it out. This is what Donald Trump.
Sorry, I jumped the gun on you, but let's
don't worry about it. Here's the president explaining why he was taken off early.
I have to be back. Very important. I want to just thank our great host. He did a fantastic job. Thank you. In Canada. But you probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can. We're going to have dinner with these wonderful leaders, and then I get on the plane. I have to be back early for obvious reasons. I loved it. I tell you, I loved it. And I think we got a lot done, really a lot done. In fact, UK, we signed a big trade deal today, and we're working on others. But we had just a really great relationship with everybody, and it's really nice. I wish I could stay for tomorrow, but they understand. This is big stuff.
Goes on to say, she says, is there a reason you can't do this? And he kind of goes on from there. Some missed opportunities, to be sure, including a missed meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, president of Ukraine. Canada does manage through the course of a 70-minute meeting to reach an agreement within the next 30 days on tariffs and trade. But your thoughts on Trump leaving early and what it did to the dynamic of the G7, including Canada's interests there?
It was definitely a bit unexpected. And I think we had heard in the news that he had called like the Situation Room to get together the second he lands. It's quite obvious he went back because of the escalation with what's happening with Israel and Iran. And because of I think one of the missiles that Iran had sent had impacted a U.S. embassy. There was a bit of a trigger on that part as well. So him leaving, it was not ideal. But it also kind of just shows you the state of where we're at right now. I'm really, I would say, concerned with what's happening and where the U.S. is going with what's happening in Iran. And I think that as endearing as some of the comments that President Trump just made about the fact that the meeting went well and they did some good things and he loved his time there, he's also somebody who tends to have a trigger finger when it comes to how he reacts. And when he said, like, everyone leave Tehran, there's 8 to 10 million people. Where are they going to go? And like these threats of where is this going to escalate? It is terrifying. And I'm really concerned about what he went to go do when he left.
I don't know if I'm sure you've seen this, but this was an absolutely remarkable exchange. Do we have to let you go, by the way? We're keeping you longer than we asked for. How's your morning looking?
We came late. We're good.
Okay,
We're
awesome. So we can hang out because this exchange between Tucker Carlson, not a liberal, and Senator Ted Cruz is absolutely remarkable. The position from the White House has been that the United States is not involved in Israel's strikes on Iran. But then there was this. Check this out. Senator Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson.
You don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the
I'm
one
not saying that.
who can't figure out
I'm
if it was a
saying
good
you
idea
don't
to kill
believe-
General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really
we're
believe that,
carrying out military strikes today.
you said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not
at all.
bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
This is
Israel.
high stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Wow. What you didn't see earlier is what got Cruz really upset is Cruz was talking about Iran, and Tucker says, do you even know how many people are in Iran?
Right.
And he said, like he didn't know, millions, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes back to Tucker, how many people are in Iran? He's like, 92 million. He knew immediately, and he's like, you're trying to destroy a people, and you don't even know how many people live there. And that's where Cruz got his back up.
Super fired up, right? Super fired up. And then as Tucker Carlson quite rightfully points out, if the United States is indeed at war with Iran, this is a big deal.
Well, guys, what world do we live in that Tucker Carlson is asking the hard-hitting questions and trying to get
of Republicans?
I was just like, I've never liked Tucker Carlson.
I like him there.
I like him there too. You know, I'm really struggling with this whole dialogue of what's happening because there's the we are responding. And listen, and we're getting to a point in this war where we've gone from retaliation to retribution. And is Iran's leadership bad? 100%. Does that qualify mass bombings of a place that's got what, 92? What did you say, 92 million people? No, it doesn't. Tehran alone is up to 10 million people. These are not these are innocent civilians, and I wrote a piece about this as well when it comes to civilian casualties and like why we need a bit more humanity. And I think that the U.S. and Israel are using this as an opportunity to kind of flex their muscles of what they can do. You might be able to destroy the entire regime. You will never destroy the ideology. And I think people are very naive and being basic again. I've seen people on social media saying, as soon as the Ayatollah and everyone is gone, that means freedom for Iranians. I wish, God willing, as they say, inshallah, that they have freedom. I don't see that happening. Look at other countries. Look at what happened in Libya. Look at what happened in Iraq. It is never that black and white. So Tucker Carlson's asking the right questions. And I think that the senator had his backup because he kind of let it slip what the intentions are. And I think Netanyahu is kind of using them as a clutch to go all ham and hard on Iran and not considering what the outcome is truly going to be to civilian casualties.
Yeah, it's been like, I'm trying to do the math in my head. It's been like 73 years since the United States toppled a democratically elected government in Iran. It may be obvious, but sometimes you got to ask the questions anyway. What would be the stakes, or how would it change the game if the United States were to enter the chat, so to speak?
A lot. I think that, again, having lived in the Middle East, I think people think when Western democratic societies come in and insert themselves and try to make things better, it doesn't make things better because you can come in and get rid of what you want, but you're not changing the infrastructure of how things operate. When you get rid of one extreme group, there's another extreme group sitting there and waiting. There's a big subsect of people who think that the royal family of Iran, the Shah's family, is going to come in and swoop in and kind of like take their rightful place at the throne. That is not going to happen. I think it's naive. It is going to probably be far worse. And I think we are escalating to a point of very risky return. Just the mere fact that they were attacking and trying to get rid of the nuclear facilities and what they were doing there, that on its own is risky. And I'm terrified. Like, I'm terrified because I also think that the Iranian regime that is still there, they're willing to go all in as well. And again, the people that suffer are civilians. There are families, there are children, and we are far too comfortable with a cost to war being human life.
Yeah, I think, Iran's supreme leader has gone on the record by way of Iranian state media. By the way, wow, dramatic footage. We don't have it here, but how about that TV studio getting hit by a strike as they were live on air? It's just like that kind of stuff just blows my mind. But Iran's supreme leader warning that any U.S. military intervention will result in irreparable damage. Now, there's also video making the rounds, and I know that Jon Stewart did it on The Daily Show, and others have been showing, Benjamin Netanyahu warning of Iran's nukes over the past 20 years or so. And of course, it I think probably reminds people of the Iraq War and the Americans, of course, going all in on the weapons of mass destruction, which were later determined to be either non-existent or grossly over-exaggerated. What's the risk here for the international community, maybe even including Canada?
Well, I think that we always have to assume that they have the worst, they have everything, right? No one wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. I actually don't want anyone to have nuclear weapons.
I'm with you.
When I was in the energy sector, I got an understanding of nuclear facilities. And we're not talking about weapons. We're talking about facilities that power communities, and just the mere amount of security and processes that are in place, because nuclear is very effective, but very volatile and very dangerous. It is scary as hell. So does anyone want Iran to have it? I don't want the US to have it. I don't want Canada to have it. I don't want anyone to have nuclear weapons. But we have to operate under the assumption that Iran has what they're saying they have. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And maybe they're willing to use it in the event of more escalation. So are we willing to call somebody's bluff? I don't know. This is something that I'll call your bluff in poker. I'm not calling your bluff when it comes to nuclear weapons. Yeah,
that's so very well said, Sharan. We always appreciate your insights on these types of things. Can I also say we recognize the experience that you bring to these types of conversations, having lived in the Middle East, having worked in the energy sector, having worked in politics, and we always appreciate the way that you shoot from the hip as well. And the precision trolling, just the cherry on top.
Love the trolling.
If people want to read more about your take on the diplomacy angle, the strategy behind Mark Carney's G7 invitations, they can find that at thehub.ca. They can follow you on X at Ms. Sharan Kaur. We'll link to both in the show notes, and look forward to the next time our paths cross. And look at that. At the very least, you kept us on the ledge today. At the very worst. At the very best, we're feeling a little bit better.
Walk off just yet.
We're feeling a little bit better. Thanks, Sharan.
Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, you as well. That's Sharan Kaur, longtime political strategist, campaign manager. She was Evan Solomon's campaign manager, as a matter of fact. Former national broadcaster, now a member of parliament.
Hold me now, 'cause I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm thinking
that was so good.
Maybe 6
we
feet
might actually have to pay royalties on that. That was so damn good.
I played it last night in the Moss Pit. I couldn't help myself because you could just feel it in the third. I was like, you know what? We'll play a couple somber jams, because I think when you're down 4 rip and then 5 rip, I think things were looking pretty bad. Yeah. But hey, that Tucker Carlson interview, let's go back and talk about that for 1 second.
That was wild.
I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson. I tend to think he's not a journalist. He's an entertainer. But and I'm not just giving him props because, I lean left and I only agree when he does that stuff. I do feel like something has happened. I don't know if you've been watching him the last 6 to 8 weeks. Something has turned. Trump had that insult he threw at Tucker. I forget what he said. And I don't know if that put a prick in his back or his butt or whatever got him riled up, but he's really, I'm not going to say he's moving to the middle, but he's been attacking some of the White House and their office and really going over things with a fine-tooth comb, whereas before he would just always agree to the one side, obviously the right or the far right. But I really like this interview because a lot of us think Ted Cruz is a moron, right? And for you to be preaching
a half Canadian moron,
that you were okay. Let's pretend you didn't say that. Let's pretend he's not half Canadian. But for you to be on national television or whatever, this stream, and millions of people are listening to you, and to say that we need to topple this country because XYZ, and not even know the amount of people that you're affecting. You don't even know you haven't even gone on the Wikipedia page of Iran and seen how many people were there. I don't know why, but I literally was watching. I was like, Tucker.
Yeah.
Tucker.
Yeah.
You're fact-checking people, Tucker?
Well,
wow.
I mean, and I would say, like, I'm not going to, this isn't like going to become the Tucker Carlson love it,
No,
but I
no,
would just say, like, underestimate one of the world's most popular talk show hosts at your peril.
Right.
Right. The insult, by the way, when Donald Trump was asked what he thought about Tucker Carlson's criticism of the United States getting involved in Israel's action in Iran, Tucker basically said, paraphrasing it, that Trump is abandoning his America First approach. He shouldn't be doing this. The president replies, quote, "I don't know what Tucker Carlson is saying. Let him go get a television network and say it so that people listen."
See, that's out of touch, because that guy he goes live on X, and there's millions of people watching, just as many who watch Fox News and CNN and all those, and he gets them in an instant. It's like putting out a radar or turning on the open sign outside your store, and people just rush in.
Yeah,
so
100%.
that's pretty toned down.
Yeah, how about this from Elias, who says you got to wonder if maybe Tucker's positioning himself for a president. Well, he didn't say presidential. No. Elias says for a run, but maybe for a presidential run in 2028.
Come on, he's got such a cushy life. He's already a millionaire. He's already nobody wants the stress of what Trump has right now.
Yeah, no kidding. The interesting comments here as well from Les. Thanks for your YouTube channel membership, Les. He says from hockey to World War III. Yeah, sometimes that's how our show goes. I saw the comment that Jillian made earlier in the chat. I've lost it, Jillian. I'll paraphrase it. She basically said, none of this would be happening if they would have elected the smart black lady. Julian says, there you go. Someone else reporting that they saw a sign at the King's Parade. What was it? The Trump military parade that said something like, "I'd be at brunch right now if we would have elected Kamala." So, there you go. I mean, we're chuckling here. There's nothing funny about what's going on right now.
I just love brunch. It's brunch is amazing.
What's your go-to brunch? If you could order anything,
I think everyone goes for the Bennies and the mimosas, right?
Yeah,
so, but for me, I love, and people are going to be like, I love a good avocado toast if you've got one on the menu.
Yeah, you would. Kenzie says there's no way Tucker will run. He has said so many times. Kenzie, you and I both know he wouldn't be the first to say he's not running before he does.
Just like Trump.
Tony says, I think Trump's uber sensitive about stuff because his military parade on his birthday was an epic failure, and millions tuned out and tuned into the No Kings protest. Instead, that No Kings protest held across the country. Pretty interesting. Jill says lots of right-leaning personalities like Piers Morgan are moving to the side of reason only because the public is seeing how outrageous and out of control things are getting. And Jill says not wrong in saying that Tucker and Piers go where the money is.
100%. And I'm seeing this more and more. And I forgot to mention that after I said, he's not moving to the middle, but you see all these online personas now being like, oh shit, we're 3, 4 months, 5 months, we're into this term, and all the things he said he was going to do are not even close to coming for fruition. Every time he says something's in the works, it's 4 weeks away, 2 weeks away, it's not happening. These wars have not stopped. Things are getting worse in the Middle East. They're worse in Russia, Ukraine. So a lot of them are just kind of like, maybe I'll just shuffle over here a little.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. Hey, let's take a break from the news cycle, and then I want to get into some follow-up to the conversation we had with Alberta Teachers Association President Jason Schilling on class sizes and the looming teacher strike. We're hearing from teachers. We're hearing from parents. No surprise there. And we want to give you the floor. As you know, every week, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper, we have a chance to step out to the mountains, to take all that stuff in the news cycle and kind of just move it out of the forefront, push it to the side of our mental desk for a moment, if you will, and take a look at the memories that lie in wait in Canada's crown jewel, that is Jasper National Park. And this week, we want to put a live theater show on your radar. This is one that has earned rave reviews since inception, and that is From Jasper with Love. We invite you to join Jasper Theater Productions for an evening filled with laughter, heartfelt stories, and good times. It's built from scratch and cheekily scripted. From Jasper with Love is unlike most plays. So instead of a traditional kind of an A to Z chronology, the production is constructed as a series of different skits with an evolving cast of really silly and lovable characters. I've seen it. I loved it. That desperately and hilariously try to warn the audience to stay away from Jasper. And you'll see how it all comes together. It is well worth your time. It is well worth your attendance. From Jasper with Love is the perfect after dinner or evening activity to wrap up your day in Jasper while reminding you why this little mountain town is truly unforgettable. You can check them out online and get your tickets at jaspertheatre.ca. You can also find a really cool feature on them on Instagram, and we'll share that in the show notes as well. There is a warning here, and that is that this show could quite rightfully cause you to fall even more in love with Jasper. It's From Jasper with Love. You can also find more details on Tourism Jasper's website. That's jasper.travel. The live theater show From Jasper with Love. And John, I also wanted to point out a quick thing as well. If you go to the homepage, jasper.travel, and you check out what Tourism Jasper's got going on, you can see that blue bar right at the top. This is that Canada Free Pass, or the Canada Strong Pass, pardon me. Too much election talk. It's the it's the Canada Strong Pass, and this is such a great opportunity. From the 20th of June, so basically this weekend, all the way through to September 2nd, Parks Canada is offering free admission to all travelers. There's no catch. And 25% off camping fees at participating locations. Okay, so free admission for all visitors to Jasper National Park, plus a 25% discount on camping fees from the 20th of June to the 2nd of September. So today is a perfect time to book your family vacation. You can learn more about that Canada Strong Pass by checking out jasper.travel. Look right at the top of the page. My Jasper Memories is proudly presented on Real Talk every Wednesday by our wonderful friends at Tourism Jasper. Jillian says it looks super cool. It is super cool. Listen, Johnny and I will make you a promise, and that is on this show. If we're talking about where you're buying your barbecue, or where you're buying the steaks to put on your barbecue, or where you're taking your family for vacation, the closets you're installing, the cars you're driving, where you're getting your clothes, we're never going to talk to you or promote a place that we don't go to, that we don't shop. It's all part of being real, part of Real Talk. And so I'll tell you, that theater show, I know that if you go out to Jasper, people are going to go out there. If you're lucky enough to spend 2-3 nights, maybe you're lucky enough to spend a week or more out there. I'm not going to tell you to go burn an evening on something that you're not going to love, and I guarantee you'll love that show.
I love going out to Jasper. I was just out there, and you know what I like to do is just kind of turn off my phone, and then, you know, I'll turn it on a few hours later.
Is that tough for you to do?
People be like, you know, emails, texts, I'll be like, oh, I'm in the mountains. This is, you know, cell reception is just it's touch and go here.
Yeah.
Sorry, when really I'm relaxing.
Yeah, exactly. But
alone.
I'm so happy to hear that. It's what you need and it's what you deserve.
Oh, you got to tune out every now and then. It feels so good when you don't get a bloop.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife the other day. This was a private conversation. Now we'll make it public. Real talkers, just keep it between us, will you? And
here's some insight into my marriage.
I was just talking to Carrie. He's just an incredible partner and an amazing support, and also the voiceover for Real Talk. And I was just talking to her. I said, you know, gosh, we've got our Real Talk Golf Classic coming up on the 19th. This is probably a good time to mention that the show's going to be off the next 3 days, Real Talkers. We've got the 19th. We got a show, obviously, coming up early next week on the Tuesday, but we have our Golf Classic, a commitment on the 20th for charity, and then on the 23rd, I'm going to be supporting the University of Alberta Chancellor's Cup, that golf tournament. So we're going to be away for a few days, a great time to catch up on the highlights. Yeah. But I was saying to Carrie, just with everything coming up, including throwing this golf tournament, that, by the way, we're going to raise funds for 10 post-secondary students to receive financial supports in Canada. These are students that have endured real heartbreak, losing a parent to cancer, but we want to remove those barriers. But a lot of work goes into this tournament. And so I was saying to Carrie, you know, I kind of feel sometimes like I'm burning the candle at both ends. I'm burning out. I'm barely keeping up. I'm trying to keep my head above water. Yeah. And she says, the one thing that guys like you need to remember, and let me pass this advice on to you. She said, you can't solve that with more output. Yeah. She says your output is maxed. Yeah. And so you need to find a way to do that. And I think you got it. Recharge opportunities, like heading out to the mountains, going for a walk. You know, I mean, we hear from a lot of people. Some of you write in just to let us know. You leave a comment on our Spotify in particular saying, we love when you give a shout out to the bike riders and the dog walkers, because that's when we listen to the show. Even getting out today, by the way, would have been our dear pup Moses' 13th birthday. We think of him today for all the dog lovers. But I think one of the benefits, one of the many benefits of having a dog or getting outside or falling in love with hiking or fishing or whatever it is like you get out there and for a little while you can kind of forget about everything else, right? Listen to the sound of like your spin caster as you're going to try to catch a rainbow trout or whatever it is. Something that takes your mind off everything that can be really emotionally and mentally oppressive.
Yeah. Output is high. And we're like this. I don't want to say it's the end of our fiscal year, but kind of in the summer is when we kind of get some recharging. And I know we both need it, but like tomorrow, we're going to expend a lot of energy. Because we want to see our real talkers. We want to see our sponsors, our supporters of the show. We want to see people who support the charity. And we want to, hey, how's it going? Yeah, Oilers lost, but, the sun's shining and let's have fun. But it takes a lot out of you. But I'll say this again. The best part of the day is at the very end. When you're tired, when you've been standing all day, when you've been glad-handing and hugging and sharing stories and being conversive. And then you sit down and you have a nice dinner. And then the person we helped last year or the person we're helping this year steps up to the podium and you see them get emotional, obviously because they're talking about a family member, a parent that they've lost, but also because they look out and see all the people that they're sending them to school. And when they start to like get emotional and then you get emotional and you're like, this whole day, this whole thing we do, this show all year round, this is what we strive for is to help people. Right?
Yeah, unbelievable. And it's amazing to be a part of it. We're getting booed in the live chat by Emily. I'm not sure. Just as we talked about
what?
Raising $50,000 for kids who've lost parents to cancer, I'm not sure what we're getting booed for.
I think because we're taking the days off to recharge
raise
mentally.
tens of thousands of dollars for people and recharge
so
mentally.
So we don't have breakdowns.
I mean,
because we deal with you in the chat every. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. It's one of the benefits of working for yourself. You don't have to apologize, but at the same time, we can share our appreciation with you. Kathy says, we're at the cottage listening right now. Kathy, we sure appreciate that. You know what? I'll tell you another thing that really resonated with us, and I think with you, based on the feedback that we've received, was Jason Schilling, president of the Alberta Teachers Association. In our most recent episode, that was on the 17th of June. If you haven't yet had a chance to check it out, Jason talking to us about that 95% vote to strike by Alberta teachers. They've got basically 120 days to do it as negotiations continue. Alberta's teachers, more than 50,000 of them, looking for a deal. Right now they're working without a contract from the province. The province making the argument that the Alberta government, that Alberta is spending more on education than ever before. Teachers saying that class sizes are killing us, that basically we're all burning out, and that if things don't improve, including more EAs and librarians and the like, then we're going to walk. And Jason, Johnny, I want to try playing this from my computer. We're trying to
love
some new
it.
technology.
We've got some new tech here.
But here we are. If you go to our YouTube channel, that's the Real Talk Ryan Jesperson YouTube channel. You can check out our full episodes, our shorts, our highlights, flamethrowers, and more. And here is Jason Schilling, ATA president, talking about whether or not class size matters. I knew I would screw it up. We'll throw it in the podcast. No, I think I am unmuted, but anyway, it doesn't matter. This is what happens.
I got you. Go.
I wanted to try something
again.
new. You got me,
it
really?
was my fault. I was muted.
Oh, really?
Ready?
Okay, well, let me see if I can do it. Will it work?
Talking about the fact that their class sizes are the largest that they've ever seen. We just did a survey with our membership. 69% said their class sizes are larger than last year. 90% of the members say that the complexity of the students in their classrooms are more complex than last year. But 58% will indicate that the supports for those kids have gone down. So teachers don't have the tools that they need in order to meet the needs of their students, and that has a lot to do with it.
What's ideal, like 22, 23, something like that?
When we were on strike in 2002, we got the Alberta Commission on Learning gave us some guidelines. And so kindergarten, or K to 3 was 17. 4 to 6 was about 21. When you get into junior high school, it would be about 25, 27. Now, I've taught classes of 25. But I've also taught classes of 42. Teachers are also talking about the fact that their class sizes are the largest that they've ever seen. We just did a survey with our membership. 69% said their class sizes are larger than last year.
Okay, so there he is. I mean, that's pretty striking. You imagine being a teacher in a class with 42 students.
Well, how many kids did you have in your class average when you were in high school?
I mean, it's stuff I don't remember. I mean, first
of
all,
that was like 25,
85
30
years ago. But I seem to remember 25. I seem to remember people talking 25 to 30. But then again, don't trust my memory. But we've heard from a ton of you, and we appreciate this, and we want to hear more. To talk at RyanJesperson.com. This is, what you describe as a developing story until they reach consensus here, until there's an agreement reached. The threat of a strike for the next 4 months, for the next 120 days, will loom. And if it doesn't happen with 72 hours notice before final exams go down, and it doesn't sound like it's going to, But then again, I thought the Oilers were going to win Game 6, so take it for what it's worth. It doesn't sound like it, but then families are going to be wondering through the summer what the fall might look like as well. You know what I mean? Kristen left a comment here on our Instagram post, which I appreciated, and said, I think that the other thing that's making it really hard for those outside of the classroom to understand is that these kids are not clients to us. She says these are, in many circumstances, vulnerable young people, right? Many of whom put a lot of trust in us. And it's an incredibly sad thing to go home every day feeling like you failed somebody who's relying on you, especially when you get to know these children and their families and you watch them grow up. Kristen says, Jason is so correct. Our children are not an expenditure. They are an investment. They're our future. They're worthy of receiving an education that will give them the skills they need to not just contribute in the future, but also to survive. We also got an email from Tara, who wrote in. Tara says, great show with Jason Schilling. She says, I'm a Patreon member and I watch daily. Tara, we sure appreciate you. Says, a similar thing happened last year. I shared the story of that Ukrainian kid that's in my son's grade 4 class and some of the extra supports that this young man is requiring for obvious reasons. And by the way, it sounds like he's an incredible young person that's processing a lot. But the point being that teachers, oftentimes, especially without an EA in the class, have a lot of things pulling on them. Not to mention the quiet kid in the back or the loud kid, the class clown that's maybe kind of hiding something about some sort of a deficiency or some sort of a delay in their understanding. You guys know. I don't need to explain to you the dynamics in a class of 25 or 30 or 42 kids, right? So Tara says, after hearing your story about the student from Ukraine in your son's class, I had to share a story from my daughter's school. She says a similar thing happened last year in my daughter's grade 6 class. Toward the end of the year, a young boy from Ukraine joined the group. He knew only a few words of English, but the teacher stepped up and did what she could to help him pick up the language however possible while continuing to teach the rest of the class and support all the students. Tara says what was amazing was that the teachers at the school outside of the classroom stepped up even more, together gathering clothing for the boy, not just for him, but for his mom. They found him a bike. They put out feelers to some of the other parents in the class to see if anybody had a lead on an affordable apartment and maybe even a job for the mom, all on their own time and in some cases with their own money. And I know teachers can relate to that. Tara says they went above and beyond and nobody asked them to do that. Tara says, no matter what happens here, the teachers have my full support for whatever job action they need to take to get what they need and to get what they deserve. Tara says, thanks for always putting out a top-tier show. I learn something every day. That's music to our ears. That from Tara. And that's just a couple of the comments, man. We've been receiving more and more and more, and we encourage people, when something resonates with you and you can give us some real-world insight onto how the things that we're talking about are resonating with you and your family, we'd love for you to share it with us. It allows us to kind of offer up, quite frankly, a more informed perspective. No offense, Johnny. It's not just me and Johnny. You know what I mean? We want to make sure that we're able to understand how these things are resonating with you and your family. Holly wrote in on our Facebook. She says, I got to tell you, teachers and nurses have got to be two of the most disrespected of the so-called respected professions. Constantly made to feel like they're a burden on the taxpayer during contract negotiations, made to feel like they should be grateful for even having a job at all. Holly says they take all kinds of abuse from the public. The workload is constantly increasing with no increase in pay or resources. Holly says it's awful, and quite frankly, I think that both groups have had enough. We did ask Jason about that as well, Johnny. Why don't we go back here? So just to, again, give you a quick note about our YouTube channel and what you can find there. In addition to the shorts, which is basically the best moments in the show boiled down to 60 seconds or so, you can also find the highlights, and these are really easily shared. Should Canada ditch supply management? A great exchange there, including my cousin Graham, who's a dairy farmer, from just 4 days ago. How about 10-second epic, sharing their story about Smoking with Snoop Dogg as 10 Second Epic has announced their reunion show. That's a fun highlight you can check out. I love what you did with Alberta's coal controversy explained. It's basically the entire coal story in 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So you can really understand it.
So that was hard for me to understand because I was hearing about Zimbabwe and Australia and how these companies came to, how Gina Reinhart came to own the rights to everything. And I was like, even I'm confused by this. So if you want it all in like literally the first 2 minutes, you'll get all that. And then you'll get another 6 minutes of why basically nobody in Alberta is really on board with more coal.
Seventh Pilot in the chat says, years ago, teachers didn't hide things from parents. Parents trusted teachers, maybe not so much these days. I don't know if that's a reference maybe to the pronoun thing. You don't hear a lot about teachers hiding things from parents, but I think that's when politicians are torquing this up, in particular on the pronoun notifications. Obviously, when Danielle Smith made that a priority early in her mandate with the UCP, we spent a lot of time talking about that. But we asked Jason Schilling when he believed people started turning on teachers and what it's been like for teachers to essentially be vilified in the public eye. And here's what he told us on the show.
There's a lot of members of the public, including a lot of parents, that just don't seem to be down with the teachers. You know what I mean? There's a lot of chirping that happens. There's a lot of antagonizing teachers, I think, that happens in the public on social media comments and the like. I know that you're very familiar with that. Considering that these are the professionals that are educating these people's kids, that are raising the kids of the future, that are sounding the alarm about the challenges that they're facing and the real world impact that those challenges are having on the kids, on the adults of tomorrow. Does that blow your mind?
It is something that makes me question. I'm like, why would we be this way? Because we would want kids to be successful because they become adults who work in this province, who pay taxes, who help support communities out there. So we'd want to invest in these kids. And sometimes I hear people talk about education as an expenditure, and we need to look at it as an investment. And right now we're not investing in our youth in this province, and I think that is terrible.
What a great point.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the teachers these days especially. And I even see it from our listeners, they're being kind of villainized. And I'm like, what are you? These are the people that take care of your children in many instances. And I'm not saying there's bad parents out there. I just know that you're busy. You're strapped for cash like every other, middle class Canadian family right now. But they're taking care of your kids for longer than you are most days. I mean, you drop them off. You expect them to be safe, and you expect them to be smarter every year when they get to the next level of their education. And for all of a sudden to be like, hey, you don't deserve to live above the poverty line, but please take care of my children and teach them to be, excel in life. It just it boggles my mind. I talk about this every time we talk about it. Like, give them more money.
Super Chat Ken says, we've got the highest paid MLAs in Canada, and we did before they gave themselves raises in January. He says it's pretty hard to argue against highest paid when the MLAs are doing it for themselves.
Give the teachers some MLA money.
Yeah. Emily says, right, tongue in cheek, says teachers are just babysitters after all. What do they need a living wage for? Tongue firmly planted in cheek. Straight up, great handle, straight up. Is that an Alberta Rose on your profile photo? I like that. Says what really burns me up is that people complain, that the teachers have the summer off. Like, were you not aware of this? When you were deciding on a career? Is this something new to you? Why didn't you become a teacher then? I love that. I've never heard anybody take that. Straight up goes on to say the same people who whine about teachers having summers off are the same ones who say they could never be a teacher because it's too hard. Chelsea the Ginge says education and childcare, the return on investment for society is what many seem not to understand. Return on investment is a fascinating thing when you're talking about where governments, let's say where societies invest, right? You want to talk about investing in, like, for example, public awareness around things like nutrition or tobacco use or things like that. When you want to talk about investing in, like, schools, when you talk about investing in harm reduction, 100%. When you want to talk about investing in alternative measures, especially in the justice system for young offenders. I've told you all on this show, I've shared before, I was a young offender, and nothing violent, but something really stupid. And I was offered that alternative measures program.
Yes.
It didn't get me off the hook. It did not get me off the hook. I paid reparations. I did my community service. I made my apologies to the family that was involved, etc. But at the same time, it didn't screw me for life. And I just think, and there's people with way less privilege than me that deserve those same opportunities. I think people look on the surface and they say, why is society spending millions or billions of dollars on these types of things? At the end of the day, number one, empathy and compassion and humanity, but also, like we just heard there, return on investment.
But I like the second point better, because when you say empathy and compassion, there's a lot of people out there who say, you know, get tougher out there. But you're exactly right. Preemptive strategy. It's like these people. Here's a metaphor. It's like people who are like, oh, I have an event in 2 weeks. I need to lose 10 pounds and go to the gym. That's not how it works. You can't just go to the gym and in 2 weeks be in shape. You have to, over time, adjust your diet, your lifestyle. You have to run. You have to do weight training. You have to do all these things over years. And then eventually you become this healthy person who looks good and can, go to events and look incredible. But that's what we do with teachers. If students don't get the education they need, if they don't feel listened to because the teachers are not being paid enough, and they're like, why would I do extracurricular? Why would I spend more time on this child? I can't even afford my bills. You think I'm going to spend an extra half hour of my day when I've been here since 6:30 in the morning to teach this kid something I know they don't understand because they have attention problems and all these other things, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm just supposed to teach the curriculum, and they're see how I'm getting upset? I could never be a teacher.
You're
guys.
not getting upset. You're passionate.
But what I'm saying is, if you invest in education, if you make teachers happy and they make students happy and those kids get a good education, or at the very least, just feel listened to and guided, and, the guidance counselors and the teachers, at least no matter what level of intelligence they're at, kind of push them towards, hey, this would be good for you or that. They don't end up in crime. They don't end up doing drugs. They don't end up on the poverty line. And we're so quick to just, how do we solve drug problems? Throw all the drug addicts in jail. Get them off the streets, throw them all into shelter. Why are they on the streets? Maybe it's because they didn't get a good education. Let's go all the way back to the start.
I was talking to a friend of this show who works in harm reduction, on the front line, helping people on the street. And he's got lived experience. He's a remarkable guy. And he was saying to me, for example, with Alberta introducing this legislation around, basically, this is not what the government's calling it, but forced treatment, right? Involuntary drug treatment for people. And he just said what a lot of people don't realize, there's a lot of factors at play here. He says one of them in particular, and again, you have to have some empathy here to recognize that this is a fact. But he said you put somebody, a person who's used drugs, someone who's experiencing an addiction, into involuntary treatment for a number of months, he says, and then you release them with no other supports at the end of the day. He says, in addition to all of the other factors, which are the rate of recidivism is very high. Many of these people are going back to their peer groups. They're going back to what they know. They don't have supports in place because those areas are underfunded. He says, in addition to all of that, from a physical standpoint, their tolerance for the drugs that they may use is way lower than it was when they went in.
Sure.
And he said they experience drug poisonings and, in the most tragic circumstances, overdose deaths on a relatively and tragically frequently basis after people leave detox and rehab because they don't have the supports in place.
Yeah. I mean, we need more supports in general. But I think back to teachers, I think they are with your kids so much that they can identify. What are the reasons people do drugs? They probably didn't get enough love. They had a bad family upbringing.
There's a lot of reasons.
Maybe they lost their job, whatever. But when you're younger and you're in school, teachers can identify these things. And they're not therapists, but they can, talk to parents and say, hey, I've been noticing your child has a behavioral issue, or they're sad. They need to see a therapist. They need to talk to someone. They need extracurricular activities. They need a tutor at home. They need all these things. So my thing is teachers are there from the beginning, from the time your kids are in kindergarten until they graduate high school and choose a path that they're going to try and follow and be successful. And we need to pump. I'm not saying pay teachers $5 million a year, but for God's sake, 6% over, what was it, 12 years?
6% over
is
12.
Not keeping up with,
not
lifestyle
even close.
and the inflation.
We're hearing from more teachers in the chat. I want to get to this. And if you've represent an alternative perspective. If you're listening or watching live, you know where to find us on YouTube. That chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. And of course, you can always leave a comment on our YouTube episodes or send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. More of your comments plus some videos from the golf course coming up in just a little bit. But first, if you're going to be barbecuing into this weekend and of course throughout the summer, entertaining or even just feeding yourself, I want to make sure that Friesen Brothers is on your radar. Barbecue season is officially here, friends. And if you're after the ultimate Alberta barbecue experience, Friesen Brothers is your go-to. They're all about Alberta proteins, fresh beef, pork, chicken, even bison, all of it coming from right here in our home province of Alberta. Plus, at Friesen Brothers, their in-store bakery, this is like one of my first stops when I go there. You're going to find freshly made buns, Alberta sourdough loaves, and of course, all the good stuff you want alongside your barbecue spread. Make sure you pick up sourdough cinnamon buns while you're there. A whole lot of Friesen Brothers produce is locally sourced as well, so when you shop at Friesen Brothers, you support Alberta growers and makers. It's not just convenient, it's the one and only spot for a truly local barbecue shop-up. Find out more at friesen.com/barbecue season. Hey, speaking of Alberta-owned, family-owned companies, how about California Closets of Canada? We're so proud to partner with this team, the best in the business when it comes to custom closets and storage solutions for your entire home. It all starts with a free design consultation. You can book that today at californiaclosets.ca. Whether you're looking to transform your garage so you can finally find all the stuff you're looking for, maybe it's an entertainment center, maybe you're looking for a custom closet or wardrobe, or maybe you're looking to convert that second bedroom, that guest bedroom, into a home office as well, or vice versa with one of those super cool Murphy beds. California Closets can work with any space and any budget, and it's all guaranteed for life. Request your free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Hey, we're sending a shout out to all of the graduates of 2025, the class of 2025 at Athabasca University. AU's world-class accredited online degrees and courses are designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. I bet there were more than a few AU students that maybe took a couple of weeks off from their studies to really jump into the Stanley Cup Final. Now they're back at it. They didn't miss a thing. You set your own pace, you make your own plan, and that's why more than 94% of Athabasca University alumni report being satisfied with the quality of their AU education. You can learn more about the AU Advantage today by visiting their website, athabascau.ca. And we're so excited to let you know about big things on the horizon for our friends at UCAN Youth Services. It's not our announcement to make, but when we're ready to make it, you're going to hear it here first on Real Talk. We're thrilled to see members of this community stepping up to support this organization, a nonprofit dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. You can support the work that UCAN is doing. Learn more about it on their website at ucan.ca. Our support, their success. It's UCAN Youth Services.
Now, you being the voice of the Friesen Bros, incredible commercials that I just love hearing.
Oh, thanks, John.
On the former stations that let us go. I have a new ad campaign. I think you should send it over to the people at Friesen.
Okay, well, they listen, so they're going to hear this.
Because you were talking about how they're the best growers. How about Friesen Bros? Not just growers, showers.
Oh,
Because, and listen to me here, man, they have one of the best produce sections. Like, you go to any grocery store, and then you go into Friesen Bros, and it's absolutely incredible. And, you know, the grocer who always comes in here, they've always got something, I don't want to say exotic, but just a few items that you're like, what the hell? I've never seen this.
Like those Satsuma oranges?
Oh, my gosh. And just little surprises in the produce section, but just the colors, everything just looks incredible in their produce section. It's a magical wonderland over at Friesen Bros.
Yeah, man, they do a great job, and they take they put a lot of pride into it as well. This is like a small thing, but I love
presentation.
They even have they have like a cellar area in the store, so all the things that, like, you know, our grandparents and great grandparents would have put in their root cellar, like all the root vegetables, for example, like the onions and all that kind of stuff, the garlic.
In that
it's
corner,
like
and
dark
I love
cooled,
it. Yeah.
and They do it on a whole new level, which is why I get so excited talking about it. So Straight Up, who was sharing with us in our live chat earlier, talking about teachers who have the summers off and saying, did you not know that you had the same job opportunity? Reporting, by the way, Straight Up is a teacher. A grade 7 teacher says we got 33 kids in our class. So that's a good sense of what that group is looking like size-wise. Ken K in our chat, thanks for your membership, Ken, says, I'm not against paying more and attracting better talent. Ken says the Alberta advantage should not be limited to blue-collar jobs. I think that's a great point as well. Jillian, a junior high school teacher, says comments like teachers are hiding things just shows an inability to understand that teachers do a job. We follow policies. We don't personally target anybody or anybody's values, which I think is an important point to make as well. Jillian goes on to say, remember, teachers get paid for 10 months. She says we don't get paid for the summer. And that's something that's obviously relevant. Emily's oldest is starting grade 7 in the fall. Obviously an exciting time, but Emily says, I can't say I'm not nervous for her. Do you remember like when you started, when you going from grade 6 to 7 or going from grade 9 to 10? It might have been different in Ontario with the different structures, but I remember walking into a brand new, massive high school in Calgary, Henry Wisewood, Jeff Poilievre's alma mater. And I remember walking in there as somebody who knew nobody. I knew like 15 people at the whole school of 2000. It's a hell of a different. It's very exciting, but it's nerve wracking.
You had a different experience than me. I grew up small town Ontario. Hey, Mama Infamous is actually watching and listening.
Is she?
I saw her in the chat, but I'm not gonna point her out because in the chat might.
Oh, you don't want to say what her name is?
They might seek her out and dox her or something. My aunt's in there as well today. Both of them listening. Hello.
They should be very proud of you, John.
But they know that I don't have that experience because I grew up in a small town just outside of Toronto, and my high school was like everyone knew everyone, and I actually lived like right behind the school, so I could literally like walk across the street and be at high school. So, but you had a much different experience because you went to like kind of an indoctrinated place and then you switched over. Right?
Yeah. I've shared before. So I was at a private Christian school down in Calgary from preschool to grade 9.
Yeah.
There were many wonderful things at that school, and then there were things that like I would change. Put it that way.
But you had the private school experience.
I had the private school experience, and then and I'll credit my parents for this forever. My parents were always very open to like, what do you want your education experience to be like? What's your priority? What do you want to choose? And I said, I think I need to be in a public high school. I want to be in a public high school. And so I was, but then I plugged into the public system. So I hadn't been there. I didn't know anybody in that public system. Now, the one thing that kind of bailed me out a little bit is that my dad practiced medicine. His office was in the so what do you call it? Like the feeding area for that high school, the zone.
Oh, really?
The zone. And so I go in, Jesperson, somewhat of a unique name, I guess, in a way. And people would come up and say, are you Dr. Jesperson's son? I'd say, yeah. They go, he's been my doctor for like 15 years. And then you automatically, they're like, we love him. He's so great. So then I kind of like got plugged in a little bit. And then, of course, every kid or most kids will be able to kind of make their own friends from there. But it was a big adjustment going from private school to public. I've joked with you. I mean, there's probably bigger things. Some of the things, one of the first things I remember is that it seemed like every boy in the school had a tin of chew in his back pocket, which in 1992 took some getting used to. Ball caps on inside. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
People dropping F-bombs, talking back to teachers. Like if you talk back to a teacher at Glenmore Christian Academy, you got the strap.
Oh, yeah.
So there was that. And then also what they were teaching. Science class did not focus on creationism as an example. It focused on evolution. And I mean, all of the adjustments that you make as a young person, learning to develop critical thinking skills.
I went to a school before I went to my high school, which was pretty religious, as a lot of schools in the small town I was in, and they had the strap. And I remember I was deathly afraid. They would do it where, like, your first or second strike, you come in the office, they put your hand on the desk and then strap right beside you, and you knew next time was whatever. But I find it interesting also that you were in private school, Christian, and then you went to public school and became a young offender. I'm just kidding.
But you know where I committed my crime.
We got to do some research.
I committed my crime at Christian Youth Group.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So I stand corrected.
Everybody, I'll just say it. I've said it before on the show. I don't want you guys to leave it all vague and you're wondering what the hell did he do. Like an absolute idiot, I threw a piece of meat at a vehicle that was passing by on the road.
We used to do it.
Busted up their windshield.
Donuts.
And just a stupid move. But you hear these stories, kids throwing snowballs at vehicles and all this kind of stupid
donuts
stuff.
Off a bridge. We used to take the
I paid
donuts.
the price. I paid the price. So, and I'll be
5
able to,
years in prison.
Well, the thing is, you can do the luxury, I guess, not luxury, but the result is that like 25, 30 years later, you can talk to your own kids about your brush with the law and how you got to make smart decisions, right?
Cameron Gate comment in the chat. I see teachers aren't really concerned with wages. It's more supports for challenging kids, class sizes, more EAs, not having to buy supplies themselves. I agree. Like maybe they wouldn't be asking for so much. When do you ask for a raise at a job? Usually when you feel like you're pulling more slack than you originally signed up for.
Well, it sounds like Gen
right?
Z asks for a raise 8 weeks in.
I would like a 5% raise today, Ryan.
That's literally, I was talking to a couple employers recently, and we were talking about, this was an off-the-record conversation, but about a roundtable that we're working on coming up. I want to get Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X around the table and just talk. I think it would be fascinating. And I asked the CEO of an ad agency in Edmonton, what's the biggest difference between Millennials and Gen Z in your workforce? I'm not going to say what company it is for obvious reasons. And she said the biggest thing is that Gen Z wants raises and promotions like before their probationary period is done. Well, I think that's, number one, ridiculous.
See, we have different views on this because in this day and age, if I hire someone and 5 weeks in, they're doing the job, they know what they're doing, they've done it. Like I don't have to come to them and say teach them anymore. Why not get a raise? Because the initial
What are you talking?
Let me finish. The initial
finish.
salary that you put on LinkedIn or whatever is the lowest you're going to pay that person. So if they come in and they immediately know the job and I don't have to babysit them, why not give them a little bump and be like, hey, keep doing a great job?
2 months in?
Why not?
Well, then why not?
You're offering the lowest. You're bringing someone in who's probably making the lowest in the entire company. You're paying them, let's say you have, we can hire someone for 70 grand. You're probably going to post the job for 55, 60 just to see who will take it.
55?
You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just feel like in this day and age, the way the world moves every day with AI and everything that's going on, if someone can come in, especially an ad agency, that's hustle and bustle, man. That's not, I don't want to say a job because then people will be like, but you know what I mean? That's a fast type world. It's cutthroat. If you can get in there and be competitive within 4 to 5 weeks, why not a little bump? I'm not saying like double their salary.
Well, I think precedent is probably the reason, right? Like you got to be, if you're giving people raises 2 months in for doing the job they were hired to do 8 weeks ago,
you have
then
to say
what's going to stop them from, I want to raise after 6 months. I want to raise after 9 months. I want to raise after 12 months. At some point, the employer also has to say, what can we afford? Like if this person's doing a good enough job that we can envision them being here for a long time, we can't have this person, like if the starting salary is 70, I'm not going to be able to raise this person up to 145 within the next 2 years.
No,
I think that raises should come at mile marker moments. I don't know about your employment history in the sense of how it's been structured, but mine, ever since I stepped out of a union, when I was like, VJ, we call it videographer, like shooting my work, like basically a reporter, right?
Sure.
But then when you transition into hosting, when I hosted Breakfast Television, hosted on Chad, it became a non-union position and you would negotiate your own contracts. And then it's a different situation because you could agree to a deal between 1 and however many years. I know that some people probably signed 5 or 7 year deals. I was always comfortable with 2 and 3 year deals because I felt like that was a period of time where the employer and me could both agree on my value through that 3 year period. There was enough runway to establish a trend. Our ratings are either going up, down, or holding steady. The show's profitability is either up, down, or holding steady. And then at the end of the day, my options are open, their options are open, and we can reevaluate. And so I would never, and this is my personal perspective, I would never ask and never have asked an employer to tear up an agreement in the middle of the agreement. But I'll bet you, most people at the end of an agreement, if they feel like they're entitled to it and they can go in and make a compelling argument to their employer at reasonable points, whether that's your performance review or the expiry or the renewal point, I always like to call it, of your contract, that's when you ask.
Sure.
And I think asking for raises, unless it's negotiated in your employment at the beginning, I think a 3-month probationary period is pretty standard. I think if you negotiate a bit of a raise at the end of the probationary period, that sounds reasonable to me if the employer agreed to it already. I think going in and asking for a raise because you're doing what you were hired to do 8 weeks ago, it just indicates to me somebody that just kind of, hey, listen, they can do whatever they want and they're welcome to open up a shop across the street and see if they can make it, but that's just not the way I'm wired.
I know you have a different perspective, but like most people, like even me in radio, I didn't sign a contract, but everything was merit-based like you're saying. Like often it would be that I moved up from like, say, night show to drive show and then I asked for a raise. I'm clearly moving up to a better position. I'm stepping up a foot on the ladder. Or and this happened, I would say, this other radio station wants to pay me this much more. Can you match it? You can't. I'm gone. And what you're going to find is nowadays, people, especially when you're talking about stuff like creative, ad, graphic design, all these things that you're talking about, hustle and bustle, hard work every day, trying to make viral content, stuff like that. I think that's what they're referring to, like Gen X. You're going to find that if maybe you don't give them a little bump, you might lose them to someone else. And I'm not saying every person who does their job for the first 4 to 6 weeks should get a raise, but there are people who, if they can adapt quickly and they're superstars, man, you better keep them these days.
Chelsea the Ginge makes a very good point in the live chat. She says maybe they're asking for raises because the actual job they're doing is more than what was advertised, and they want to be paid for what they're actually doing. But Chelsea, in that type of situation, and you're kind of saying that's echoing your point.
Because jobs change fast these days.
But then that's a fair and compelling point. Listen, it's inappropriate for us to talk about your employment here, but I will say that it's over. No,
what I signed up for is we're miles past.
We are miles past what you signed up for, and on some circumstances it's eased, right? And on other circumstances we're asking more from you, and you've responded in a major way and established your value to this company, and we treat you like you're very valuable at this company.
But like yesterday, AI. We won't say what part of my job, but AI made a part of my job a little easier.
It did.
So there are things where I give a little more, but then as technology advances, some things ease up. So,
you're 100% correct. Keith in our chat. Keith, thanks for being a YouTube channel member, says set value for performance. And I think that's great as well. I also saw a similar comment there from Seventh Pilot along those same lines. Reward for performance. That's life.
I love that.
Says Seventh Pilot, and I totally agree.
I think we both have unique perspectives because we're in a market media. We're not journalists, but we're in a performance-based, I don't think like a lot of people listening nowadays, they haven't had contracts. They haven't had, people offer them different roles at competing companies and you flipped over and stuff like that. So I think we're in unique settings where I also think maybe Gen X is just, and Gen Z, maybe they're just broke, Ryan. Maybe they think what they signed up for and what their salary they accepted, and then they go get an apartment and they're like, man, this isn't enough money for me to live.
I think that you're probably hitting a nail on the head there, man. I mean, you look at the cost of living and the increases just over the past couple of years. I think of everybody, maybe aside from the 1%, their boats and third residences are getting more expensive. But in all seriousness, I think of the youngest, and I'm talking adult population here. Obviously the kids factor in big time, but I'm thinking of the youngest members of our workforce, and I'm thinking of the retirees and people on fixed, and people on pensions and fixed incomes. Obviously for them, this is an entirely different conversation. I want to understand Scarlett's comment here. She says, I think that many places also have a COLA, like a cost of living allowance to meet inflation, which is nice.
Oh, that's
That's really great. And actually, I'd love to, I'll tell you what, Scarlett, either send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com or I'll do some Googling on it because I want to learn more about how that works. A cost of living adjustment, which is interesting. It puts the employer in a position of, I guess, some sort of financial, and when it comes to budgeting, financial uncertainty based on where inflation is going. But at the same time, it keeps your workforce, and I'm not just going to say happy, but it keeps them able to keep their mind on what they're doing and able to keep their head above water, which is obviously huge as well. What's your workforce doing, or what are you doing as an employer? We would love to hear from you to talk@ryanjesperson.com. The audience is what makes this show what it is, and your firsthand perspectives we're so grateful for. Can we show off a few videos of the ranch right now just as we get set? This is the eve of the Real Talk Golf Classic, our 4th annual, in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship, and we just wanted to give a shout out to the ranch. I had a chance to be out there for Father's Day with 3 of my very best pals, and the course is looking just unbelievable. I want to tee this up for everybody that's going to be joining us out there. Check this out. This is my buddy Dustin Johnner. We call him DJ, former captain of the Seattle Thunderbirds. Look at that, an absolutely beautiful chip on 18. But look at the greens right now. Look at the fairways. The ranch is in tip-top shape for the 4th annual Real Talk Golf Classic. Here's our buddy Brett Chartrand, former pro soccer player. If you know soccer in Edmonton, you know this guy. Not a pro golfer, but still putting in a hell of an effort. and having so much fun. He instructed me to delete that video, although I did not comply. The whole purpose of showing this, there's Jake Kubisky from Kubi Energy. Johnny, look at how good the course looks out there right now. I mean, what is this? What is this?
This
is
incredible.
the Ranch. This is
I can't wait to get out there.
Alberta's #1 public golf course, and there's Jake in slow-mo off the 10th tee box. That's where you're going to find our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park on the 19th of June, serving up their Dilly Bar shooters. Dustin with the big stick. Look at this. This is about 285 over the water on 18. Nearly missing the drink cart. Well played, Dustin. We're looking forward to our sold-out field of 152 golfers that'll be joining us out there. And, of course, all of this presented by our friends at National Bank Financial. We're going to go out there and raise $50,000 or more for the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship. And, of course, it's all going to happen at the Ranch. You can learn more about the Ranch tournaments. They're going to do like 120 of them this year, as well as book your tee times on their website, theranchgolf.com. So, Johnny, that's it. As we sign off, I want to let this audience know we're going to be away Thursday, Golf Classic, 20th, Private Charity, and the 23rd, the University of Alberta Chancellor's Cup, which I'm proud to be participating in. We're back on the 24th, that's Tuesday, with former Mayor Don Iveson and a group of real estate developers in studio. Should be interesting. Alberta Business Award winners on the 25th, Supriya Dwivedi on the 26th, and on the 27th, Indigenous tourism in Alberta. Prepare to learn something amazing.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.